In this video, I'm going to talk about my first steps with virtual reality in Unity and a bit about VR sickness. At least for me, it turns out that all of this is a lot more interesting than I initially thought. To start off, I'm going to present my naive implementation attempts, followed by some interesting things I discovered afterwards. So how did I come across this topic? Well, ever since I managed to get myself a VR headset, I wanted to try my hands on doing something creative with it. Until that point, I had played a couple of games on it, and one common attribute seemed to be the teleportation of your in-game character. This is quite different from moving freely around as experienced in traditional first-person games. After some discussion with people more knowledgeable on this topic than me, it seems that the idea behind this feature is to avoid getting sick. As it turns out, the most common theory for motion or VR sickness suggests that people get ill due to the body registering a difference between an actual and an expected motion. In other words, your brain is getting confused due to the opposing feedbacks it's getting from its inner ear in charge of your balance and your eyes. Personally, after spending quite some time in various types of VR games and simulations, I never really encountered this motion or VR sickness, which can cause nausea, headaches and more. So for a while I had this idea. What if I could do something without adding teleportation and just simply use the gamepad joysticks to move around freely? Would I get sick immediately? And if not, how would it feel? Only one way to find out. Setting up VR with Unity was a piece of cake even for me. And yes, compared to my last Unity adventure, I spent quite some time looking up documentation and tutorials beforehand. In fact, all you need to do is install the XR plugin management and your plugin provider, followed by converting your default main camera to an XR rig, and the headset part should be working. Unfortunately, looking at an empty scene does not become more interesting with VR, so I added a flat surface and a bean-based character before continuing with the controller integration. I must admit that I then lost quite some time trying to figure out how to install the XR Interaction Toolkit, which is still a preview package and was therefore a bit hidden out of my sight. Once installed, I could assign controllers to my character and I was ready to read some inputs. The Unity documentation quickly became my best friend as it had mappings for my controller and some sample code. This was all I needed to get my character moving around using the thumbsticks. Quick side note, using out to pass something as reference instead as by value reminds me of when I learned Turbo Pascal back in high school. Somehow, as a Java programmer, C# is sometimes surprisingly familiar and sometimes very weird, but in a good way. Once the basic movement was working, I added some cubes to my flat world to make navigating around visually easier. I also noticed that having a bean-based character is not ideal, as your flexible VR camera will more often than not clip through in one way or the other. So no more bean rendering from that point onward. And what can I say? The user experience felt great to me and was comparable to dual stick movement as you know it from consoles. The big difference being of course that now I had this display directly attached to my face which reacted to my head movements. I then decided to take a break and discuss my results with a friend who quickly told me that I did not have added any jumping or stairs which should be integrated to simulate accelerations and height differences. So I went back in and added both features. Especially jumping led to some funny moments as my rigid body based physics approach was not correctly set up. And after having learned my lesson before, I was not going to try and reinvent the wheel, and an excellent practice video came to my rescue. After implementing a character controller based approach, movement worked like a charm. To finish, I created more world elements and everything still felt great. Before getting started, I purposely did not read too much about VR sickness and best practices to have an open mind and to make my own mistakes. However, after getting my feet wet, I started reading the Virtual Reality Sickness Wikipedia article. For the rest of that evening, I was then reading various reference articles and getting deeper into the rabbit hole. The first finding being that it seems to be not completely understood why some people get sick when playing VR games and others are not. In any case, it seems that factors such as your gender and age, as well as technical parameters such as the field of view and refresh rate play a role in how much you experience VR sickness. For what it's worth, I recommend reading the article as an entry point to the topic. For example, it led me to watch this game developer conference video from 2015 where researchers experimented with putting a virtual nose as a fixed reference point into their VR experience. They discovered that people were feeling a lot more comfortable simply by having this virtual sniffer in their view. And surprisingly, some participants did not even notice it at all. If you want to know the reasoning behind, go watch the video, which is linked in the description. After having some first successes with VR and reading up a bit on related topics, I now have even more ideas and components to take into account for a future iteration of this project, and I'm curious to see what else I can do with it. In this case in particular, I was once again blown away by how easy Unity it makes for you to try out your ideas. And even though my code is not worth talking about, it's down in the description. That's it for this video, and I thank you for watching.